Good evening, everyone. James Hancock here. I'm back to review Gaspar Noé's new film Climax, starring the great Sofia Boutella. I feel like I'm the last person on the planet to see this movie. While it might be opening day for the movie here in the US, Climax has been playing internationally for quite a while now. But in spite of being the last person alive to get a chance to offer an opinion on this movie, this time of year, there's so few new good movies worth seeing that I wasn't about to miss an opportunity to talk about Gaspar Noé's work on this channel. If you're unfamiliar with his films, Gaspar Noé is one of the few filmmakers alive today who consistently creates beautifully subversive work that manages to provoke and outrage his critics almost to the same degree as the films appear to delight his fans. His films frequently feature shocking scenarios of either a sexual or violent nature, much to the horror of those who reject his movies outright. But as far as I'm concerned, international cinema needs far more provocateurs who are willing to reject the joyless, humorless, oftentimes puritanical approach to filmmaking that so many people seem to prefer. But just so we're clear, I wouldn't say I exactly enjoy his movies. Enjoy is the wrong word. His movies are experiences, and I rarely see them more than one or two times. But in my opinion, the art of filmmaking would be so boring and lifeless without filmmakers like Noé, who every few years resurface in order to jolt us out of our complacency. While he was born in Argentina, Noé moved to France as a teenager, where he eventually built his career as a filmmaker. The first film by him that I saw was Irreversible back in 2002, a movie that many people are still pissed off about being exposed to the present day. I went into it having no idea what to expect, but let's just say my first exposure to Noé's work left me a little stunned and admittedly slightly repulsed, and it took me a few years to watch any more of his movies. In today's climate of pearl-clutching recreational outrage, it's amazing that Noé has not been crucified publicly as a result of having directed that movie. He's made many shorts and videos since then, most of which I haven't seen, but I never miss his feature films, which include Enter the Void, Love, and I Stand Alone from 1998, which I saw for the first time recently. These are not easy movies to watch, but if you have a taste for the rough stuff, movies that explore the savage side of human beings in a poetic and artful way, Gaspar Noé is your guy. A few years ago, I attended a Q&A with him after a screening of his movie Love when it was first released in the US, and his personality was not at all what I expected. He was so calm and thoughtful, and I think a lot of his haters would be caught off guard by the discrepancy between his bad boy image and what he's really like. Which brings us to his latest movie, Climax, a film that was shot apparently with only a 5-page screenplay. The story takes place in 1996 and features a dance company that is rehearsing their show before leaving for America. When the rehearsal is over, they celebrate with a little music and some sangria, but as they soon learn, somebody spiked the wine with LSD, and for the rest of the film, everyone involved in the story experiences an increasingly nightmarish evening where pretty much everyone surrenders to their baser instincts, resulting in sex, violence, public urination, incest, suicide, murder, you name it. In an interview, Noé described it as the reverse of 2001, a movie that he really loves. In 2001, we see man going from a very primitive state to a highly evolved state. He wanted to do the reverse with Climax. It's quite a ride, and admittedly, I was feeling a little bit limp by the time the film got to its conclusion, but I can't deny that there were many stunning sequences that I will never forget. The earlier parts of the film are actually quite enjoyable, and I nearly wore out my foot and ankle tapping to the beat of the music as Sofia Boutella and her fellow dancers put on an incredible show all in one take. I've been obsessed with Sofia Boutella ever since I first saw her in Kingsman: The Secret Service, an obsession that only intensified with her appearances in Star Trek Beyond and Atomic Blonde. We'll pretend the mummy didn't happen. But what I did not know until recently is that acting's actually her second career and that she was a professional dancer long before she ever showed up on the big screen. My hope is that we'll see her in more of these kind of films moving forward. The athleticism and creativity that she and her fellow dancers put on display will leave you absolutely slack-jawed in awe. And as the film slips into its darker chapters, Boutella puts on the performance of her career, one that reaches levels of insanity very reminiscent of Isabella Gianni in Possession. I mentioned Possession specifically because Noé loves that movie. In the opening scene of the movie, all the dancers are interviewed in front of this bookshelf where many of Noé's influences are on display. And I wish I could remember all the DVDs that I saw up there, but I definitely remember seeing Luis Buñuel's Un Chien Andalou, Dario Argento's Suspiria, Pier Paolo Pasolini's Salo, and most importantly, Andrzej Zulawski's Possession. If you know these films, that should give you an idea of what kind of atmosphere and style Noé is going for with this particular movie. On a personal level, I started experiencing some pretty horrific flashbacks from some of my own experiences where social gatherings have gone to the dark side due to people not quite knowing how to handle what they're putting into their bodies. I've avoided sangria like the plague ever since I was 16 due to an evening in Madrid where I got completely destroyed the night before flying home. On the flight the following day, I puked so many times that I nearly had a seizure where my face and hands completely locked up until I was able to get some water and Coca-Cola into my system. And let's just say this movie did not excite an interest in revisiting sangria anytime soon. And not to get too confessional, but if you've been around parties where heavy drug use is involved, you probably have your own memories of when the vibe and overall atmosphere suddenly changed, creating a situation that feels a little dangerous, where all it needs is a little spark before violence will erupt. This film perfectly captures that shift in mood as the characters increasingly turn on one another in acts of brutal savagery as their humanity just slips through their fingers. By the end of the film, seeing people beaten nearly to death or being laughed at if they catch on fire becomes pretty much the norm. But I don't want to make the film sound like nothing but a downer. There are so many things to enjoy. First and foremost, the film is drenched in sex appeal, with astonishingly beautiful performers who appear to have nothing but sex on the brain. There's this lengthy sequence cutting between all the various characters, talking about all the things they like to do and to whom, and I frequently found myself laughing out loud. The film also captures so many great little details about bad trips that reminded me of my own experiences, like when Sofia Boutella stumbles into a bathroom to get some water and she makes the critical mistake of looking at her own reflection in the mirror and recoils in terror. As any seasoned pro knows, looking into a mirror when hallucinating is inviting this nightmarish moment of hellish introspection that should be avoided at all costs. Looking back on the film overall, what it reminded me of most intensely was actually Richard Matheson's brilliant horror novel Hell House. My favorite passage from that book is a lengthy description of the horrible social experiments performed by Emmerich Belasco on his unsuspecting guests in his mansion. If you've never read that book and have a taste for horror, definitely check it out. Or if any of what I'm describing appeals to you, definitely check out Gaspar Noé's Climax. Stylistically, I promise it's unlike anything you've ever seen before. It's wildly experimental. It's incredibly atmospheric. As I said before, his films are experiences, and while they're not always appealing experiences, there are so few filmmakers these days making dangerous movies that challenge our expectations that I felt compelled to do my part in calling attention to this particular movie. It's actually his first movie to get an R rating in America, so of all of his features, this one could be described as his most soft and fuzzy and a good place to start if folks are nervous about what they'll get exposed to by watching his movies. So as you've probably gathered by this point from the tone of my voice, I'm a big fan of this movie. I don't know how many times I'll revisit it from start to finish, but it was the perfect way to get my weekend started. A24 continues to be one of the most reliable brands in all of filmmaking. Every year I feel like they have anywhere from like 3 to 5 absolutely essential movies to watch. And Climax is definitely one of the wilder movies they've released in the last few years, so definitely check out the flick if you're interested. If you want to talk more about Gaspar Noé's work, or if you just want to talk about iconoclastic subversive filmmakers, you can definitely find me on Twitter at ColeRex. There's a link in the description below. But if you would consider subscribing to my channel and giving this video a like, that's very helpful to me. I would really appreciate it. But I can't thank you enough for watching my video, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.